Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Foreign Correspondent Club of Japan. My name is Pio D'Emilia. I'm the moderator of today's press conference. As we all know, we at the Foreign Correspondent Club have tackled this issue already many times. Is another kind of pandemic going on in this country, which is kidnapping or abduction of minors. Now, we all know that this is not only a problem of the so-called Kokusai Kekkon, international weddings. It is, in reality, a problem of the Japanese society itself. In Japan, as a tradition, cultural tradition and de facto tradition, when you separate or divorce, most of the time the kids are going with one parent only, and most of them, people say that some over 50% or even 60%, they don't see anymore the one of the parents. As you know, in Japan, there is no such a thing like joint custody. There are some parliamentarians that are working on that, but still now, I think it's on one of the very, very few countries in the world that does not provide in the family code the joint custody. I think there is another country near here, North Korea also doesn't have this. Okay, so today we are introducing another case. You remember we had in the past the case of French citizen who did the hunger strike during the Olympics, a few other foreigners and the Japanese. Today we are introducing Jack Stone, an American citizen who has a dreadful story to tell us. He starts from Miami, from the States, where he was living with his Japanese wife. And then he had to look for his kids that were abducted from the United States by the mother. He came here, he found them, took them back somehow, so did an action. And then the kids were abducted again by the mother. So to resume a little bit the issue. But I will let Jack Stone talking from himself. We have also on the screen on Zoom, he's one of his lawyers, Mr. Hiroki Koike, who is his lawyer, and they had a hearing yesterday at Sendai Court, so we will probably touch on that too. Before giving the microphone to Jack, let me say once again that the views expressed in these events at the club are not the views of the FCCJ, of course, and we do not accept any responsibility or liability for any of this view expressed here. Thank you very much. Jack, the microphone is yours.
December 20th, 2021, at the Senate confirmation hearing of Rahm Emanuel, nominated as U.S. Ambassador to Japan, Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Bob Mendez closed the hearing stating, "The U.S. has named Japan a top 3 worst offender of international parental child abduction." The United States Supreme Court, in a very famous case called Abbott v. Abbott, Judge Ginsburg said, child abduction is the worst form of child abuse. Not long thereafter, the European Parliament voted 33-0 to sanction Japan because of the thousands of children abducted into this country. And we all know they don't go back home after they're abducted into this country. The European Parliament, in its 33-0 vote, held child abduction is the worst form of child and spousal abuse. These are the very applicable Hague Convention articles that apply to my case. My facts are very unique than other people's facts, and when you hear them, you're going to hear they're quite shocking. In November 2018, my wife, child, and I lived in Miami, Florida. My child was 4 years old at the time. Today, he is 8. I was studying to take the Hawaii bar exam. We had planned to live in Hawaii because approximately 40% of those who live in Hawaii, who have their life in Hawaii, are of Japanese origin. And I surf. My son started surfing at age 2. So living in Hawaii is an absolute perfect environment for children like mine who are part Japanese, and myself, who I'm German, Jewish. Many people call me American. November 11, 2018, my wife abducted my child in Japan, aided by her parents, Fusao and Toshika Suzuki, who had repeatedly interfered with my parental rights, including ordering their daughter to abort our first child under the threat of being kicked out of the family and removed off of the family registry. My wife did not want to abort her child, but the pressure, the undue influence on her father was so great, she did. And my wife psychologically went downhill after that. I didn't leave her. We ensured that she would be pregnant again. We were not married at the time. We were together for 6 years. But because it was an international relationship between her and I, her family refused me. I never was even allowed in their house for 6 years. But we thought by having the baby that we would be able to resolve that matter. I took beautiful photos of her holding her stomach, and she's so beautiful. The next day we went to Kyoto to a famous child shrine, prayed for our child's health, and signed papers how we wanted an intelligent, brave, beautiful child. And if my child was going to be a girl, we chose the name Kohana, which is a Japanese name meaning child from flowers. November 14th, after she abducted my child into Japan, I immediately filed a Hague Convention return order, and here it is right here. I was already fully aware that Japan was internationally condemned as an abduction black hole, and that U.S. had Japan on its Hague Convention non-compliant list. In 2015, I published an article titled Japan, Abduction, the Hague, and Sanctions. It's one of my most read articles. After abduction, my wife hid my child at an undisclosed location for almost 2 months. I feared never seeing him again. January 2nd, 2019, I located my son at the wife's parents' house in Yonezawa. These are the people who ordered her to abort my first child. I took physical custody and prepared to leave. My wife's family was violent and injured my child as they tried to rip him from my arms. I managed to get downstairs outside of the ground. The only thing in my child's possession were a handful of toys. This is all he had. He did not have a change of clothes. My wife refused to give me his suitcase because they were still running around and hiding from me. I myself had on the exact same clothes I'm wearing today. I've been wearing these clothes for 3 years. My child and I were then homeless in Japan. I have a photograph, I can't show it, but my child, when I got him in the house, literally had slippers, his slippers as gloves. And the wife had slammed the door, locked and shut it, refused to give me his belongings. Japan's legal aid service, Hoterusu, has refused to give me legal aid. This is their notice to my lawyers. They gave to my lawyers that they refuse to give me any legal service. I'm stranded in a foreign country over 3 years. My visa for 3 years is only 6 months in length. It's barely better than a tourist visa. I'm unable to work, and I've been terrified. My boy lived with me under these horrific circumstances for 3 years. We were absolutely homeless, and I lost this $160,000 employment contract. while homeless in Japan without a job. Japan's Hague Convention authorities are supposed to issue a return order within 6 weeks. That's the requirement. Again, we were homeless. Finally, after more than 10 months, they refused to order my child returned to America. This is a gross violation of the Hague Convention. If a child is removed from Miami, Florida, he is to be returned to Miami, Florida. Immediately after this, my wife tried to initiate custody proceedings in Sendai Family Court. She tried to get my child back and to get custody. However, a judge in America in federal court, because I had to sue the United States Department of State, who were refusing to order my child passports. After my wife kidnapped my child into Japan, she destroyed his passport, stranding him in Japan. February 6, 2019, I went to the embassy to get emergency passport for my child. The embassy knew we were homeless. These are 2 court orders from federal judge Rudolph Contreras refusing to give my child a passport. That judge cost me $160,000 employment to return to America where I could provide safely for my child. Instead, Japanese authorities and American authorities left us strandless and homeless. I filed an appeal to Japan's central authorities. They refused my appeal, they said, because I didn't provide a Japanese translation. I don't speak Japanese. By this time, I was penniless, and we are homeless. And this is their excuse to not order my child home. I didn't provide a Japanese translation. I don't speak Japanese. I don't write Japanese. The Hague Convention requires 2 languages to file your applications, even in Japan, English or French. That's it, not Japanese. Article 2, a child must be returned expeditiously of the Hague Convention. Article 11, 6-week requirement. More than 10 months, I'm waiting around homeless. During this time that my wife attacked me in Sendai Family Court, Judge Jill Otake in a Hawaii federal court, I've already been involved in 14 different courts. She held, October 28, 2019, federal judge Jill Otake held, November 11, 2018, Miyuki Suzuki, plaintiff's spouse, traveled from Florida to Japan with their minor son without plaintiff's consent. The court takes judicial notice. Plaintiff's Florida family court proceeding was underway. The last place in the United States plaintiff resided is Florida. Notice it says plaintiff resided. The plaintiff is my child. Japanese authorities are supposed to give comity to court orders in the United States. This is clear under the Hague Convention. 2 federal judges held my child lived in the United States. Federal Judge Contreras, who refused to give my child a passport, notice in his document entry 160 in my suit against the Department of State that it was unfair. Japan's Hague central authorities refused to order my child returned. Now, one bright light here. When I went to the Sendai Family Court, I had attorney Yohei Suda, a Hague Convention expert representing me for free. And he lived in Tokyo, and he paid his own expenses to come to Sendai. And as soon as I was brought in, I told the judge, you do not have authority over me. This is an improper forum. You do not have the rights under Article 16 of the Hague Convention to make any decision on the merits of my child custody. The judge knew nothing about the Hague Convention. We had a meeting in chambers, and the judge admitted, because I gave him a copy in Japanese, the judge admitted, I don't have jurisdiction over this. My wife sought provisional custody, it was dismissed. She sought permanent custody, it was dismissed. She tried to circumvent the Hague Convention, kidnap my child, and bring him to Japan and take him from me. My wife also signed, before kidnapping my child, I have a Juris Doctorate. Cases. So I guess you can imagine I know a little about family law and the Hague Convention. I knew Japan was a big problem. So not only did I publish an article in 2015, I also had my wife sign a waiver to any proceedings in Japan for divorce or child custody prior to abduction. With this waiver, my wife has no power in any court in Japan. Next, it's shocking that I can't even get legal aid. And because of my visa, and because Sendai city officials who have been wonderful, the Japan Supreme Court said foreigners in 2017 cannot have public welfare money. Sendai ward office staff, Naoto-san, a wonderful man, Megura-san, Narisawa-san, they said, despite the Supreme Court, our situation was such a human rights situation. And by the way, Sendai's Immigration Bureau has been wonderful too. They're limited what they can do for me. They all consider this a human rights situation that Japan has caused, that Japanese authorities have caused. They gave me welfare, and I'm not supposed to get it in this country. They gave me an apartment, and they paid for my apartment, and I'm not supposed to have any of these benefits. They gave us 100% health insurance. Other than the police, the officials have been wonderful. Next. Excuse me. My child spoke. I want to show you these photos. This is a photo of my son pushing a stroller down the street because we were homeless. We were going to the international train station to access the internet, to communicate with Japan's central authorities, with also the federal courts that have done nothing for me at all. Here's a picture of my son and I.
No, please. I told you not to show the pictures
Okay.
of the son.
I won't show that photo,
Please.
I'm sorry.
Please.
This is the toilet. My son and I had to carry the computer into every time we communicated with Japan's central authorities and the courts in America. We locked ourselves into a toilet to plug my computer in order to speak with officials. And the station staff would pound on the door for us to get out. I was in tears communicating with courts for help. Finally, Ken Kigawa, a single parent in Sendai who won custody of his child, gave us a single room in his office. He gave us a single room to stay. This is where my boy and I stayed, waiting for somebody to give us an order to go home. I won't show my boy's face. This is my boy's 5th birthday party alone with me. I'm not showing his face. Inside Ken Kigawa's office. I won't show my boy's face. Ken Kigawa had a school, so he allowed me to bring my school. I brought my son to school every day, and I trained him and taught him and gave him classes inside the school. My son spoke in 2019. He was 5 years old. He spoke at the Asian Pacific Conference to 1,000 human rights world delegates about being kidnapped in Japan. My tiny little boy stood on a chair in the middle of the room, and there was at least 12 cameras. All of Japan's media, major media, was there. And my boy, he has a child-tested IQ of 154. My boy studies at high school and beyond level in science, history, math, grammar, and the arts. He's mastered music theory, and he's an excellent piano and string instrument player. He's an excellent watercolor artist. I won't show his photo. This is the convention my child spoke at. This is the photo of my boy right before he walked in to speak. As my child was speaking, there was delegates from the world weeping, especially in the table from India. The tables from Japan were shocked. Everybody was looking at my boy like this. Because Japanese media doesn't cover these things. So, suddenly, about a half a dozen men dressed in black suits came out and grabbed my son and threw him to the floor. Parental instinct. I'm throwing these guys off my boy. And I grab my boy, and they're forcing us out. And my boy, by himself, started shouting, "Jin Shu Sabitsu! Jin Shu Sabitsu!" Because all my boy has seen in Japan is terror in 3 years. I gave my son an unbelievably stable life in America. Well, Japan's had a chance for 3 years. Show me your way. My boy has been abducted 4 times. Currently, he's re-abducted with his other brother. He lived with me for 3 years, abandoned by the mother. Even after re-abduction, I kept bringing him back for visitations. My boy and I went to counseling, family counseling, and I would just tell my wife, "Please restore the family. I need to get a job. If you don't want me to go back to America, that's okay. We'll live here. I love Sendai. It's a beautiful place. It really is." And I always said to her, "We're going to counseling. Go to counseling with us." But she never did. Next. This is very important, and I don't think you've ever covered this in the Japanese media. The Goldman Act. I currently have a motion right now in the federal court. The defendants are the United States Department of State, the Tokyo Embassy, the United States Attorney General, the United States Attorney's Office, and the Department of Justice. I am suing the Department of State to compel the non-optional Goldman Act sanctions to finally be implemented against Japan. If a foreign country has more than 5 unresolved child abductions, Goldman Act sanctions must be implemented. What are these sanctions? The first sanction is horrible for Japan. It forces the import and exports of any goods that trade with the United States to be tariffed. This means Japan has to pay taxes on everything imported and exported with America that would immediately cost Japan billions of dollars, United States dollars. This would cripple Japan's economy and devalue the yen. The Department of State hasn't done this because we are a close ally. The closest ally to the United States is America, and Japan is the closest ally to America. Why do foreigners come here? It's because we love your culture. You have a stable culture. You're very peaceful. America's not so peaceful, as you know, especially over the past year. It's a divided country.
Okay, Scott, sorry, Jack, but we are, and your lawyer also has to speak.
Okay,
If you
I just
can,
want to
wrap it up.
Okay, winding up. We've often heard that kidnapping's not a crime in Japan. This is false. The Child Welfare Act of Japan, Act number 164, prohibits keeping a child under one's control causing mental or physical harm. A breach of these prohibition is punishable by imprisonment. And this is exactly what my wife is doing right now and has done repeatedly. I have, if you need to see it, I have my wife's Sendai Family Court's dismissal. Now, my wife re-abducted this 4th time, and this is the last thing I want to say. My wife Japan has no authority over custody of my children. November 1st, 2021, my wife received this notice in the mail. The Florida court that has custody, that has the right of custody to decide custody is this court. This court gave her a deadline of November 30th, to file a response to my custody demand of my 2 children. Instead, she kidnapped my children and went into hiding. So, my wife cannot take my child or get my child lawfully. So now she's doing it illegally. Illegally even in Japan. Please go to Mr. Koike.
Okay. Can you just end up with a brief summary of your hearing yesterday?
Yes. Before I do that, I just want to say one thing really quickly. The Yonezawa police on May 1st, 2019, I was walking with my child to go visit with a mother. The mother told the police a gaijin, a foreigner, kidnapped her kid. My child and I were surrounded by police. They ripped my boy from my arms, causing serious injuries. We don't have time for the video, but if anybody wants to see it, I have it. My child is screaming at the Yonezawa police, "Stop circling us. Leave us alone. Go us away." Then suddenly, screaming as loud as he can, "It hurts! It hurts! It hurts!" This is the life my child has been subjected to for three years. In summary, yesterday's court was shocking. I was given a list by an organization called Sentia to have an interpreter. I contacted every interpreter. None of them contacted me back. I went to the court yesterday. The judge is Japanese. Everybody in the room is Japanese except me. I have 2 wonderful lawyers, and I love them. They are right now not getting paid. So, I'm asking, where's the interpreter? No interpreter. Not one interpreter on the list that I was given even responded to me. They went through a proceeding, a very serious proceeding yesterday, without any interpreter. This is a violation of due process and fair and impartial proceedings.
And if I well understood, also the American Embassy, you requested interpretation aid and they refused, right?
Under the Vienna Convention, the United States Department of State is supposed to attend a hearing. I asked them to attend a hearing, and I sent you the email. They emailed me back and said, "This is a private matter."
Okay. Koike-sensei, thank you for waiting there. Of course, feel free to speak in Japanese. We have the interpretation here. Could we start from this very important point? Because we believe that the right to be able to express oneself in the native language, it's a kind of basic human and legal right. To my knowledge, in Japan too, this is a common practice. I have been through myself several, hearings, and I always noticed that if the defendant ask for the interpretation, this is usually provided. So can you tell us why the Sendai court this time did not provide an interpretation?
それでは私の方から回答させていただきますね。
Okay,
おそらく、裁判所としては通訳人の費用を当事者に負担をしてもらうということになっているからだと思われます。
当事者っていうのは
ミスター・ジャックですね。はい。
Okay, so let me respond. I think the reason why the Sendai court did not provide interpreter is because of the fee of the interpreter. They believe that the interpreter should be paid by Mr. Jack Stone.
I'm on public welfare
この
Okay, どうぞ。
通常であれば、ホーテラスという民事法律扶助の機関がこの費用をジャックさんに代わってお支払いをします、お支払いをすることができます。しかしジャックさんについては今回その援助決定が得られなかったということで聞いています。
From what I understand, normally this Japan's legal aid service, a private legal aid service called Hoterasu, they are supposed to pay for the interpreter on behalf of Mr. Jack Stone, but this time that kind of support was not provided.
その理由については現在我々の方でも詳細な調査を行っていますが、やはり先ほどビオ様がお話ししていたように、自らのネイティブの言語で自分の権利をお話しするということは、いかなる理由があっても重要な権利だというふうに思われますので、法テラスの対応についてはもう少し柔軟な対応をしていただきたいなというところは考えています。これは裁判所についても同様の意見です。
Now, as was already mentioned, we are conducting a detailed investigation as to why the legal aid service Hoterasu did not pay for the interpreter. As was mentioned earlier, every person, defendant, has the right to be heard of his own whatever he needs to say in his own native language. That is extremely important. So I think the decision by the Hoterasu this time was rather rigid. They had to be a little bit more flexible. And so we are looking in to the details of the reasons why they did not provide the interpreter's fee.
さらに補足して申し上げると、裁判という非常に重要な機関以外の部分でも通訳に関するサポートというのは非常に不足しているというふうに思われます。
And aside from these types of mediations, I believe that the support of interpreters is very much lacking here in Japan in many walks of life.
ですので、今回のジャックさんの事件についてもですね、通訳人等が社会の中でもう少し充実していればこのような事態ということ自体防げたのではないかという部分ももしかしたらあるかもしれません。
Regarding Mr. Jack Stone's incident this time, I think if there were more ample interpreters available in the community, then I think we would have been able to avoid this kind of issue.
私からのコメントは以上となりますが、そのハーグ条約の点についても少しだけお話をしてもよろしいでしょうか。
So those are my only personal comments, but if I may, I'd like to say a little bit about the Hague Convention. Is that all right?
どうぞ。
ジャックさんが日本に来日されてからハーグ条約のこの引き渡しの申し立てをされたようなんですけれども、これが拒絶されるに至った経緯としても、経緯の背後にもやはりこの通訳人の不足という問題が非常に大きな問題としてあると思っています。
So ever since Mr. Jack Stone arrived here in Japan and has been filing with the Hague Convention, his hearing has not proceeded smoothly, and I believe that he has been denied hearing by the Hague Convention too, and that is, from my point of view, based on the fact that interpreters are lacking. I think that is the main reason.
私の方からのコメントは以上です。何か質問があればご質問ください。
Those are my only comments, but if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to respond.
This is actually a very sad comment, Sensei, Koike Sensei, because if justice cannot go on because of lack of interpreters, it's indeed a very zangoku 状態ですね。
Can Mr. Koike tell his personal... Mr. Koike, can you tell everybody why you became a lawyer? Your story is important.
So sorry. The story is very personal stories to me. So I want to avoid to show that in the
Sure.
this media. Sorry.
Sure, we understand. May I just say that you have been involved too in a very similar situation, okay? That is. All right, so shall we go? We still have 20 minutes. Some questions first here on the floor and then online. Otherwise, I will ask questions. Any question? Here? No. So I'll start with some questions from the moderator. Have you ever, I'm sure you did, ask yourself why your wife has behaved at the beginning like that and keeps behaving like that? You mentioned me in the anteroom before that you may suspect that his parents-in-law are somehow responsible for this. So do you mean that with your wife it would be still possible some kind of negotiation?
That's a good question. As I already stated, their parents never wanted her to have anything to do with me. She was in college, in her last term of college, and her father threatened to not pay her last tuition in college if she continued in a relationship with me. Her parents, her whole family are all members of a religious cult called Risho Kosei Kai. And I had to write cease and desist letters to Risho Kosei Kai to stop interfering with my parental rights, including they named my child Masayuki. A cult leader named my child Masayuki. That's not my son's name. His name is Kai. But her entire family calls him Masayuki, and he doesn't look like a Masayuki. My boy doesn't even look Japanese. He has hair about this long. He's such a beautiful boy. He doesn't want his hair cut. He doesn't want to live in Japan. He doesn't speak Japanese. And now he's stuck in an environment. He doesn't like Yonezawa. He loves the ocean life. Yonezawa's in the mountains. He has very bad experience and trauma in that location. And I didn't get to state, but one of your most famous doctors, Dr. Akiko Onogi, she's a PhD, she's licensed in America, she practices in America, she practices here in Tokyo. In September 2019, she said the mother's conduct is horrible. In November 29th, 2021, she said, my son and I are both suffering post-traumatic stress disorder and that we really need to get him back home and he really needs to have counseling. This is your leading expert.
All right. Another question that you didn't touch upon when you during your presentation, but since we have time, let me ask you, when you contacted us to hold this press conference, you sent a lot of information, including the situation where you were arrested, detained by the police, and you were done this in front of your kid. Can you tell us how this happened and why it happened?
Yes, I had gone to Hoterusu to get an immigration attorney because, as I stated, I'm on public welfare assistance. That means the government is supposed to pay for all my legal fees, and they refused. Now, it simply was a mistake. Hoterusu will usually communicate through written letter. And I wrote them a letter and asked for a Sendai attorney because I can't get a job in Japan with a 6-month visa. So I wanted to change my visa, instead of my wife refusing my spouse visa, to change it to caregiver, because my child is a United States citizen and Japanese citizen. He lived with me for 3 years. I'm clearly the sole provider and the caregiver. The mother abandoned him for 3 years. So Hoterusu sent me a letter saying they didn't have any Sendai lawyers in Sendai. Sendai Hoterusu said they had no Sendai lawyers. My visa is expiring, and it's a terrifying position to be in. So I went to Hoterusu, and the staff came in. They sat on the other side of the table. They had a green folder. This is important. Aoba Ward Office staff, Mr. Naota-san and Megura-san, and Hoterusu has always given me my documents back at a green folder. Always. I think you know these green folders. They're standard folders in Japan. And so I was only there 2 minutes, and my child is standing right next to me. And I said, please, I need a Sendai lawyer. My visa is expiring. They said, we don't have any Sendai lawyers. I said, okay. I said, is this my folder? They said, yes. I said, okay, thank you. And I walked out with a folder. Got home, had dinner for my son. I put my son to bed, and I looked in the folder. There's 2 documents in the folder that were not mine. A stack of documents that I had mailed them myself. It was very hard to find those other documents because I flipped through it. And there's 2 that were not mine. Well, I don't have a cell phone. I can't afford to buy a cell phone. I haven't had a cell phone since I've been here. So I sent them immediately in an email. And I also sent the United States Embassy the same email saying, hey, I got a couple of your documents. Do you want them back? They didn't respond. 6 days later, more than 200 police officers come to the apartment. It's a 10-story building. They evacuated the building, and I didn't know it. Suddenly, I hear through my neighbor's apartment about 20 police officers running through the apartment, and they go out to the balcony. And at the same time, they smash the glass doors on the balcony out, and the front door gets torn open, and about 20 police officers in all black military tactical gear racing in from the back and the front. I have a cast on my leg at the time. I can't even walk. I just dropped to the floor. They handcuffed me. They put a rope around my waist like a dog, and they take me out the building. Next to the apartment, there's a stairwell, and they literally could take me to a private area that no one could see. They didn't do that. They took me all the way down to the opposite end of the building, which is the main entrance area, and they had 2 lines of everybody who resided in that building. The first line was all the children, and the adults standing behind them. All the children were friends with my son, and they're all standing in line, watching the only foreigner get dragged out of the building on a leash and thrown into a van with blacked out windows. And I was taken out of the building into a police station. I had no idea where I was. But the wonderful prosecutor on day 3, he's a wonderful human being. He heard the facts. He said, this is just a mistake. He said, you're not a criminal. He said, you're a caring parent who's put in a bad situation for a very long time. He did something that prosecutors do not do. This is day 3. He ordered a lawyer appointed to me immediately, and he gave the lawyer instructions to go to the Immigration Bureau and file my immigration visa papers so my visa wouldn't expire, because while I was detained, my visa was going to expire. So a lot of times we hear bad things about officials, but sometimes in Japan,
All right.
people are wonderful.
At the time, your son was not with you.
He was not with me.
Okay. Okay. There is, I think, another question here from the floor. This is a question to Koike Sensei. Koike Sensei, can you please explain briefly Mr. Jack case and tell us what is the next step? これからどうするの?
よろしいですか？
はい、どうぞ。
はい。これからというのはどの点についてに？
だから今昨日なんか仙台裁判で、これからどういう戦略で進むとかどういう？はい。
はい、お答えいたします。まず今後については審判の手続きを裁判所を通じて審判の手続きの中でまずお子さんの引き渡しというものを求めていきます。
So, as we proceed with this mediation, the court case, we are going to file for the return of the child.
また、ジャックさんのご希望としては、ハーグ条約に基づくこの引き渡しということも検討してもらいたいというふうに要望を聞いていますが、この現時点でハーグ条約に基づくこの引き渡しを求めることが現実的にできるかどうかについては、まだ調査をしているというところです。
And Mr. Jack Stone wishes this return to be based on the Hague Convention Act, but we are still trying to find out whether that is a realistic approach or not.
これは代理人の立場でというわけではありませんが、第三者的な一法律家として見たときにも、今のこのお子さんがいない状況というのは解消されるべきなのではないかと思っています。それはジャックさんが直前まではお子さんと一緒に普通に生活をできていたからというところです。
So I am not stating that as a legal counsel, but from a third person's point of view, practicing law. I think the situation of the child needs to be resolved because until he was taken away from Mr. Stone, he had been living with his father.
Sorry, ちょっと。
直前までお父さんと一緒に住んでたわけですよね。
だ
So
から
until he was taken by his mother, he was
his mother.
living.
You said his father.
That's him.
Yeah,
He was living with his father.
Okay.
Yeah.
はい。その上で、さらにお話しするとすれば、やはりお子さんがいなくなってからかなり時間も経っていますので、この間にももう少し子どもとジャックさんとの間で、安否の連絡をするとか、そういう柔軟な制度が何かしらの形であってもいいのではないかと思ってはいます。制約が
はい、どうぞごめんなさい。
失礼します。少し制約が厳しすぎるのではないかという気は個人的にはしています。
And it's been a while since the child was taken away from his father, Mr. Jack Stone. During this time that Mr. Stone has been unable to be in touch with the son, I think the system should have been a bit more flexible, whereas Mr. Stone could have somehow confirmed about the security, safety of his child, which has not been done. So I believe personally that this regulation is a bit too rigid.
おそらく背後にはその裁判所としてリスクをできるだけ抑えたいというところ、あるいは警察などの日本のその機関がリスクをできるだけ取らないようにしたいというところが背後にはあるのかなと思います。
And I believe that the reason behind that, the background to this type of treatment is because the courts are not willing to take any risks. They want to avoid taking any kind of risks. And the same can be said about the Japanese authorities, the police. I think they want to avoid any kind of risk.
すみません。リスクというと、what does it mean, risk?
どういうリスクのことを想定していらっしゃるんでしょうか。
はい。これは本件でということではありませんが、子どもの引き渡し、子どもをどちらの親のもとに渡すかという話のときに、例えばですけれど、家庭内暴力の問題ですとか、そういうものがあるんじゃないかと、そういう疑いを持っていろいろ見られることが多いので、実態としてはないのにそういう恐れがあるのではないかと、例えばそういうこと を懸念しているということですね。
Well, the risk being, I mean, this has nothing to do with Mr. Jack Stone's case, but whenever there is this kind of mediation between parents on trying to get the child back, sometimes there is a case of domestic violence with one of the parent. If there is that suspicion, then of course the courts as well as the police become very concerned about returning the child to that particular parent who is suspected of domestic violence. So even though domestic violence doesn't come into this case, I think maybe they do take that into account in making that their decision.
Okay, Sensei, there is another question from online by Ilgin Yurulmat.
Make one quick comment to that.
Yes.
Yesterday at court, I asked the judge, please let me speak to my son. This is his 4th kidnapping. He knows he's kidnapped. He's in a strange environment. He's not even in the grandparents' house now. He's in hiding. And I have gone after so many officials that I basically smoked out the wife. They haven't told us where she's living, but in most cases, you know, they hide forever. I smoked her out. But the police are refusing to tell me where my child is. So I asked the judge yesterday, let me speak to my son so my son can hear my voice and know I have not abandoned him. My house is filled with Christmas gifts and his 8th birthday, brand new bicycle, all these things he knew he was waiting. My son is not stupid. He knows he's kidnapped right now. But is he being fed that I've abandoned him, I don't love anymore, I left him?
Okay, that's an important point, actually, yes. Sensei, a question from Ilgin Yorulmat's BBC Turkish service. Your client is understandably distraught after his painful experience here. Are there any support organizations in Japan that offer foreigners like him shelter and legal advice while they continue their legal battle? And also, does Japan recognize custody orders of any foreign country courts to return the child to the father? Well, this is the Hague Convention, actually. I think you already answered on that.
もうすでにお答えいただいていると思いますけれども、お父様が大変に非常に落胆をされているということで、そういった場合の何かサポートをする組織、シェルターであったり、あるいは法的なアドバイスなど、この法的闘争といいますか、この裁判が続いている間にお父様に提供されるような制度というのはあるんでしょうかと。だからハーグ条約に関しては先ほども先生がすでにお答えになってくださっておりますが。
非常に私も今、ハッとさせられた質問です。女性の保護については、このようなケースだと非常に、日本でも充実してきているような印象を受けますが、父親に対する補助というものについては、私のちょっと勉強不足かも分かりませんが、私が知る限りでは、あまり、聞きません。
Well, yes, that question has really touched me as well. As far as assistance to the mothers, I think this is getting much more fulfilled here in Japan. But when it comes to the fathers, the assistance, I believe, is lacking as far as I know.
そこの点についてもう少し補足すると、ジャックさんのように非常に、日本に来て単身で、お子さんも今いなくなってしまったという状況で非常に孤独な状況に置かれてしまっている人に対する、サポートというのは、非常に欠落している状態だと思いますので、私もこれは問題があるのではないかというふうに思います。
I believe that Mr. Jack Stone has come to Japan on his own. His child has been taken away from him. He is here all by himself, isolated, and I believe that support is lacking towards Mr. Jack Stone. I believe that this is a very issue that needs to be recognized.
またハーグ、はい。
も
ハーグ条約の方はいいですか？
う、もしなんかあれば、さっきもお話でき
そうですね。付け加えて言うとすれば、ハーグ条約に関する支援も、制度としてはかなり頑張って日本の方でも準備はしていると思います。ただ、あくまで代理人の弁護士などを通じて利用するということが念頭に置かれているような制度になっている気がしますので、そもそもそういう代理人からの支援が難しい状況ですと、利用も難しい可能性はあります。
About the Hague Convention, I did touch on it a little earlier, but if I may supplement, I think this is a kind of system that you can utilize if you have a legal counsel, a proper legal counsel, but it's all based on the proceedings by the legal counsel. And Japan has been trying to adopt the Hague Convention and is trying hard to abide by it. However, as I said, it is all based on proceedings by the legal counsel. So if you don't even have a legal counsel, then I don't think you can appeal to the Hague Convention.
Can I comment to that?
Yes.
I want to comment on that. Actually, what happens is when the Hague Convention, which central authorities in Japan refuse to issue a return order, you appeal it. When they refuse that, then it goes to the Tokyo Family Court. Now, I have done everything in my power for 3 years to try to get into Tokyo Family Court, and the whole system is clearly designed to thwart my effort. It is designed to thwart my efforts. Now, in that, how could this have completely been avoided? When I early on got my child, I went to the Tokyo Embassy. The wife destroyed his passport. This is the United States Embassy passport. I applied for passports. Here's 2 denials from the Tokyo Embassy. We were homeless. We're stranded in Japan, refusing to give us replacement passport. And this is very important. Number 1, they must give passport under, okay? And that's under, it's called the Code of Federal Regulation. Under the Foreign Affairs Manual, Chapter 8, on my visa,
Yeah.
we found housing that was being paid for by the city. They only asked her to sign 1 document. She refused to do that. She has done nothing to support the family, sustain the family. My wife hasn't had a job in over 8 years. The embassy long ago should have given us passports. By the way, after my child was re-abducted, these are the 2 papers. I went back and I asked again under this emergency situation, so I have my passports in hand. So when I do get my children again, I'm getting them out of here. They refused.
On what grounds?
No grounds. They tell me, ready for this? My child must personally appear at the embassy to receive the passports. Let me say that again. My kidnapped children, where I do not know where they are, must personally appear at the embassy to give the passports.
All right.
It says it right here.
All right, Jack, we are running out of time.
Yes.
Let me ask Koike-sensei a very last, I would say, more than legal, philosophical question. The same situation. In Europe, at least, I'm sure also in America and other countries, we developed already since a long time the concept that children have their own rights. And there is an international covenant on children's rights that states, among others, that every child has the right to be raised and to be in touch with both parents, even if separated or divorced. I have the impression that here in Japan, children are not yet recognized as subjects of rights. They are considered more like assets. When they divorce, they divide the apartments, the car, the furniture, and the kids. and that's it. What could you comment on this as a lawyer? Is there any chance that in Japanese culture, not only in the juridical system, but in the culture, you start to have recognition of children's rights?
子どもの権利条約についてコメントいただければ、共同親権も含めてなんですけれども、子どもたちが独自としての権利というものが、欧米のように認められるということについて。
ではちょっと時間も限られてますので、端的に私の、考えを述べたいと思いますが、やはり子どもの権利というものはまだ日本の国内においては、十分法制度としてもそうですし、そもそも人々の社会の認識としても十分ではないものと思っています。
So this is my own personal perspective. As far as children's rights are concerned, I think it is very, very insufficient legally, as well as in terms of societal recognition here in Japan.
先ほど共同親権のお話が出ましたので、その点について、例えばフォーカスしますと、やはり、日本では親権をどちらが持つかということで紛争になりますが、どちらが持つのが父親と母親どちらが適切な親権者かということで、議論が進みます。しかしやはりそこでは子どもがどちらの親とも会う権利があるということ、そういったことはあまり考えられていないというところはあると思いますので、これは今後日本の社会としても検討していかないといけない課題だというふうに私は思っています。
And also regarding co-parenting, that has not been implemented or practiced here in Japan. Whenever there is this kind of court proceedings or mediation about custody in Japan, it is always a question of whether the father will get custody or whether the mother will get custody, depending on who is more fit to take care of that child. A child has the right to be able to meet both his or her parents. That is a child's right, but that has not been recognized here in Japanese society yet.
I want to make a quick comment on that. Okay, the number one crime in Japan is domestic violence related to parents fighting over custody of the children. The number one cause of death and murder in Japan is parents fighting over custody of their children, and I was told this by senior Sendai police officers.
All right. Thank you very much, both Koike Sensei. Thank you for participating today. Thank you, Jack, and we wish you at least to solve this situation the sooner the better for you and especially for your kids.
Can I make one final quick comment?
Well, it's the third final comment.
Okay, the police destroyed my apartment. They ransacked my apartment. They got a warrant to take my computers out. They searched my computers and they found nothing. I was charged with nothing. Then after that, I found this. It's a carrier pigeon still on its leg. A pigeon with its head cut off was left at my front door. Clearly someone wants me to shut up. I'm the only foreigner that's ever come to Japan to take their child back. And the mayor of Sendai, Kazuko Kori, ordered the police to pay and repair all of the damage they did to my apartment, and they did.
Well, actually, I saw this document, and it's amazing.
You saw the document?
Yeah,
it's true.
It's a good sign from the Sendai authorities. Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for following us, and I think this press conference is over. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sensei.
Domo.
Domo.
Lots of